Laura. This evening, I know it's not the last Tuesday of the month, but this evening we will be having an open mic. We will be discussing various issues that I find interesting, that you find interesting. And like I said, though I know it's not the last Tuesday of the month, we decided to do it that way because next week we'll be having a special guest. And since for a clash of scheduling, we weren't able to have this special guest this evening, we decided to move up the open mic session to this evening and allow for our guest next week. There are a number of things that just continue to happen every day in our everyday St. Lucian life, and it just confounds me. It's almost as if we're, those cassettes. Some of you may not know what a cassette is, but those of us who are old enough to know what a cassette is, sometimes the cassette sticks and it just, or a record. Oh, that makes it even worse because the records were later, earlier than the cassettes. And the record has a scratch on it and it sticks and it repeats the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And sometimes it's very difficult to bear in mind what era that you're in, what year that you're in, what administration makes up the government of the day. It's just so amazing. So I've been a little out of the loop for the past week. I took a little vacation and so I came back in. I tuned out, honestly, to everything and anything St. Lucian. It was a little difficult for me because I was so tempted to turn on the television, the radio, to listen to the various talk shows, to listen to the various newscasts, but I survived. I survived without tuning in. I'm not sure how much of a survival you can call it because I hate being out of touch. But needless to say, life in St. Lucia is almost like a soap opera. Yeah, you can miss a soap opera for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, even 2 months even, and then come back and within 10, 15 minutes pick up the thread from where you left off to what's happening currently. So I'm listening to the newscasts and as much of the talk shows that I could take in today. And I'm just so amazed. Despite all of the things that are happening in the world around us, we're still stuck like a broken record on things that really, when you look at it beneath the surface, are irrelevant details, to coin a phrase from a former minister. Irrelevant details. So I hear the opposition leader still harping on the Jimmy Henry situation. I almost said Jimmy Haynes, which is somebody completely different. This Jimmy Henry situation, and asking and demanding that the Prime Minister, to my mind, break the confidence of a former colleague, a former employee, so to speak, and tell him, in the guise of telling the nation, why Jimmy Henry really resigned. And frankly, I'm just sick of it. I put myself in this situation. If I were a public servant, or any employee for that matter, and I resigned my post for personal reasons, I may choose to divulge to my boss or to whomever I'm accountable to the reasons, the personal reasons, or I may choose to just leave it as that for personal reasons. I don't think it's any business of my boss, my employer, to ask me to divulge what the personal reasons are. And even if I did say what the personal reasons are, I may be wrong, and you'll get the opportunity to share your views with me in a little while. I think it's highly suspect or out of order for my employer or my boss to insist I tell him or her what those personal reasons are. And if I've told him or her what those reasons are, I don't expect him or her to go out and publicize. The gentleman has said that he's resigned for personal reasons. I think we should leave it as that. There are a number of issues, other pressing issues that are affecting us today. And I think we should focus on that. One of them being the high rate of unemployment. We still continue to be beleaguered with a high rate of unemployment in St. Lucia, particularly among the youth. We have hospitals that are not open. I think we need to focus on that. When are these hospitals going to be open? The current government made a point of using healthcare as a platform issue. And so when are the hospitals, not just one, but two major hospitals that are still closed, when are they going to be reopened or opened? Because, I mean, the previous administration, and correct me if I'm wrong, spent about $100,000 on an unveiling or the naming of the hospital, the EU Owen King Hospital, and still no hospital, not even partially. We have been getting snippets here and there of supposedly good news that especially with the kidney patients and the dialysis unit, there's going to be one at Victoria and one at the new hospital, and that there's increased capacity with the dialysis unit at the Victoria Hospital as it stands today. And that's great news in and of itself. But really and truly, what could be better news is that we're actually going to be moving into the hospital. I do not understand. I fail to understand why is it that the hospital is still not open. Now, St. Jude, on the other hand, is a little bit tricky. To my mind, to what I understand, and to, if my memory serves me correctly, we spent almost $800,000, almost $1 million on an inquiry into St. Jude Hospital. And we were told that the result of that inquiry would be made public, but we were also told that works at that hospital was stopped because they did not meet standards. They did not meet standards. There was not DCA approval for the current works as it is, because it has moved so far away from what it originally was supposed to have been. And that in and of itself is concerning to me. And it should be concerning to all of us, because you cannot have a project of that magnitude going on and DCA being asleep at the wheel. You cannot tell me that at no point did any DCA official ever go down to St. Jude and to observe the scope of work being undertaken. After all, St. Jude has been under construction, reconstruction, or improvement since 2011. We're in 2017, so what's been going on? I mean, what exactly it's 2000, correct me if I'm wrong, 2011? No, it was September 11th, 2009, I think it was, yes, 2009, I believe. My memory is a little, I guess, still on vacation, so you guys will, when the lines are open, if I got the year wrong, you will correct me. But it's been a while. It's been a while since the hospital has been closed, about 8 years. And you need to see sometime on a Saturday or on a Sunday, just take a cool drive. Those of you who do not live in the south of the island, just take a cool drive down to the south and have a view at where this hospital is located. All good and well, they did a fantastic, I think, job of renovating the stadium to accommodate temporarily the hospital, St. Jude Hospital. But to date, the stadium is not fit to even house athletes who are healthy for the most part, much less convalescing patients. I mean, it's really astounding that government after government would continue to allow St. Jude to operate under such horrendous, horrific circumstances. You guys need to come down and have a look. And those of you who have been, I cannot imagine in your good conscience allowing that hospital to operate in its current condition. I mean, if you had to utilize the services of St. Jude in its current state, I highly doubt that you would be sitting on your laurels and doing nothing about it. The roofing of the structure housing the hospital is in an appalling state. Continuously, you have galvanized sheets flying off. And we're in the hurricane season, and that always seems to bother me. You know, countless times the nation is asked, are you prepared for the hurricane season? What have you done? What is your level of preparedness for the hurricane season? But it doesn't seem that anybody is asking that of the government of St. Lucia. Is St. Jude Hospital prepared to withstand a major hurricane, storm, or weather pattern, or weather system, sorry? Do you understand the magnitude of what could happen given a calamity, say, like Hurricane Thomas, Christmas Eve trough? How devastated and devastating it would be to the people of the South, to the resident patients of the St. Jude Hospital. I mean, seriously. But the opposition, who is supposed to be a key, a linchpin, a watchdog to the government, insists on harping over irrelevant details, such as why did Jimmy Henry resign? Does it really matter? How many cases have we had of government officials being accused of dastardly acts? And we're not asking them to resign? You know, enough pressure has to be brought to bear to get them to resign. As a matter of fact, while we're asking whether due diligence was done to know who exactly Jimmy Henry was or is, due diligence was done on certain politicians. And yet still their names showed up on a ballot paper and we, the people, voted them into power. So does it really matter whether due diligence was done? Does it really matter? I don't think so. Not by our standards, not by the mediocre standards by which we judge ourselves. And when I say we judge ourselves, I'm talking about the entire nation. I'm talking about all of us, because it's one thing to point a finger and say this person did this, but you know what? These people came from our communities. They came from our families. So we judge them by the standards that we set. But yet, we expect more from them. I mean, where does it end? Where does it end? In the meantime, we have aspiring politicians, and I say aspiring because some of them were once politicians serving in government, and some of them haven't. But even those who were serving in government at one point as ministers, being that they're now stripped of their positions, being now that they're in opposition, they're aspiring to regain power. We'll talk about things like the diplomatic corps is not for simpletons, you know, and how foreign embassies and foreign relations is not for simpletons. Why? Because this current administration is toying with the idea of Venezuela, of perhaps issuing visa restrictions against Venezuelans coming into this country. Have we forgotten not too long ago that over all of the media outlets in this country was splayed a young man pleading for his life, begging mommy to ask his cousin or his brother or woman, whatever the other young man is saying, to please pay the guys because they're going to kill him. And that we were told, allegedly, that the torturers and the kidnappers were from Venezuela. Are we saying that we are not to investigate or to look into every avenue open to us to ensure that our citizens are safe, regardless of how much aid we receive from a nation? Are we saying that our citizens are indispensable? Is that what we're saying? And while to some of us, while we recognize, or to most of us rather, we recognize that diplomacy, yes, is not for simpletons, sometimes we have to wonder. We have to wonder. The most powerful man in the free world, American president, some may say is beyond simpleton. It's beyond a simpleton. I mean, all one has to do is to recall 4 days ago, the Charlottesville incident, where to describe what went on, the President of the United States of America would say that there are two sides to every story, and yes, most of us would say that we've used that phrase. There are two sides to every story. And then to say that both sides are at fault, where when a young woman, Heather Heyer, 32 years old, was plowed down in the streets like a dog by 20-year-old James Alex Field Jr. because he didn't like the fact that there were anti-white supremacy groups of people protesting their white nationalist stand. I think there is blame on both sides, is what the president said. And it took him 3 days to denounce what these white supremacist groups of people were all about and what they caused to happen. It took him 3 days. So while we want to say that diplomacy is not for simpletons, it really isn't. It really isn't. But then again, as I said earlier, the most powerful man in the free world, in the Western world, seems to be a simpleton to make a statement like that. I mean, I don't know if you recall in January, I don't know if you recall that name, Kellyanne Conway. She said that Americans, and I suppose the rest of the world by extension, should judge Donald Trump based on what's in his heart and not comes out of his mouth. Now, if we had to judge everybody by what's in their heart and not what comes out of their mouths, where would we be? Because on a daily basis, I don't even know what's in my heart. My heart. I take each day as it comes, and I may be presented with a set of challenges throughout each day. And I may think I know how I would react, but in my heart, how I feel only will be determined when I come to that bridge, when I have to cross that bridge. So to judge Trump, those were the words of Kellyanne Conway, a counselor for Trump. Judge Trump by what's in his heart and not what comes out of his mouth. That's asking a lot of the American people. That's asking a lot from the rest of the world who interacts with the American people, with America, countries that have agreements and ties to America. You know, there's a saying, when America sneezes, certain countries catch a cold. You're asking us to judge what's in the man's heart. How are we to know what's in his heart? So that happened. That was said in January. But today, when I was listening to some, I'm having a little senior moment. The guy's name doesn't come in. The face is so vivid, but the name doesn't come to my mind. And if I remember throughout the course of the evening, I will tell you his name. It's a CNN interview with this young woman, and she asked him, and you know, what took him so long, and by not denouncing immediately what took place in Charlottesville, it's like condoning, and the statements that he made. You know, there's blame on both sides. Somebody died on one side, nobody died on the other side. 19 people were injured on one side. Nobody was injured on the other side. The epithets that were being uttered by one side were not being uttered on the other side. So when you say that there's blame on both sides, were you being the most diplomatic? So this man then regurgitates almost word for word what Kellyanne Conway had said back in January. I know the president. I know him intimately. And I'm paraphrasing. And please don't interpret that to mean anything other than close. I know what's in his heart. Judge him on what's in his heart and not what comes out of his mouth. But guess what? The American people, for the most part, don't know Trump intimately, much less to know what's in his heart. They can only judge him by what comes out of his mouth. And so does the rest of the world. The rest of the world can only judge him, his policies, his stand on issues based on what comes out of his mouth and perhaps what he tweets. So maybe diplomatic relations is for simpletons. Just maybe it is. You know, and you know, when you look at all of the mainstream news outlets today and in the past 3 or 4 days since the Charlottesville incident, there's a lot going on, a lot being said. And those who are for Donald Trump, would say that the president is not he's not anti-black or anti-Jew or anti-minority. That he's against white nationalism. But listen, throughout Trump's campaign, this was basically the base that he was speaking to. And to say, no, his base is much wider than that, his chief strategist, Steve Bannon, was the executive chair of Breitbart News, which he described that Steve Bannon as the platform for the alt-right. And the alt-right, for those of you who do not know, is the alternative right. The alternative right. And the alt-right is a group of people who reject mainstream conservatism in favor for white nationalism or supremacy. White supremacy, white nationalism. This is who Donald Trump chose as his chief strategist. But yet, those who support Donald Trump will say that he isn't white supremacy, isn't for white supremacy. But the person who's responsible for your every move has described his news media as the platform for alt-right. Alt-right being people who reject mainstream conservatism in favor of white supremacy. How can I denounce white supremacy then if I have taken in my deepest confidence a white supremacist? Doesn't make sense. But then again, maybe, just maybe, diplomatic relations are for simpletons. Are for simpletons. We'll take a break. When we come back, the lines will be opened and you can share with me your views on some of what I've discussed, or open the lines, open the discourse to anything that may have affected you in the past week, or you can see will impact your lives here in St. Lucia or abroad. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and thank you for staying tuned to what's happening now with Laura on this our open mic. So the line should be opened, and you can give us a call at 451-9788, or send us your emails at laurajepi@gmail.com, or send us your WhatsApp messages on 284-6536. Would love to hear from you on any of the topics that I've discussed earlier, or any issues that you may want to open discourse on. So we talked a lot about the Trump's response to Charlottesville and how maybe, just maybe, diplomacy is for simpletons. We've got our first call online. Hello, you're on the air. What's on your mind? Good night.
Laura. You remember Family Matters?
Yes.
How Steve always used to put a call.
Yes, yes. Laura.
Yeah, but what's really intriguing to me is I'm not against Trump.
Mm-hmm.
I'm being honest with you. You know, I'm looking at it in a way, just like when Obama was in the White House as a black man. You know, black people rallied and was like, it was a big thing, history, a black man in the White House. And you find even in the 2 terms that Obama did reign, you know, I mean, even black people went through even more stuff before the police killings, the Trayvon Martins and stuff like that. And there was nothing specifically that Obama pinpointed as a black man, other than when these things happened, you know, said if it was his son, he would have looked like Trayvon Martin or something like that. Not standard. You know, the reason for me saying that is, you know, with all races there is, you know, all races are trying to establish their history. You have, you know, the blacks, the Indians, you know, the whites, you know, and it's not wrong. You know, I'm not for white supremacy, not because you're white, you're bigger than me or more than me, you know, but I understand you wanting to, you know, inculcate in your people your white tradition, your white heritage, just like black people are doing it with the like Black People Lives Matter and that kind of stuff, you know. I think all races are entitled to do that, you know, in the passing down of their history and their legacies and stuff like that. As I said, it's the supremacy part of it that I don't really forward. You know, and I also did not see anything wrong with the way the American president said what he said, condemning the hatred was his specific
But you see, I think the problem was not that he because later on he came out and denounced the bigotry and everything else, but it took him 3 days. And something like that happened. The first thing you don't say is that there's blame on both sides. I don't think at that point, even if you're going to say that you needed to know, you needed to be apprised of the full facts before you came out and say anything, but you don't make those kinds of statements without being apprised. I would expect that the president would have said that, it's a sad day for the American people, and to kind of commensurate with the dead ones and the injured ones. But the kinds of statements that he made before and after in his tweets, and then coming to say almost, like he was forced to say, to denounce, everything else. I think that's where the American people have the problems. And I would have had a problem if I were an American person.
I understand. But I'm also trying to bring some clarity to him not calling out the groups of the white supremacists that were involved, such as we know the history of the Nazis, we know the David Duke,
the KKK,
the KKK, I mean, I saw a faux pas in that, but again, there was hatred there on both sides. Those opposing the Confederate statue being brought down.
Oh, but that happened after, That happened as a result of everything else that happened on Saturday. That didn't happen.
Yeah, but I know. I know. If you look at the states right now, my dear, if you look at Lara, if you look at the states right now, you could see that there is so much hatred in the states.
Absolutely. You see,
not just about the incident in
Charlottesville.
There are several incidents before that.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, my problem, Here's my problem with the white folk in America. Yeah. I mean, I don't have a problem with white people. They're people just like you and I, Jill, you and me. But here's a problem that I have with those white supremacists and those white nationalists, and the Nazis and the KKK. America is where it's at today because of minority people, because of slavery, because of genocide of the Native American people. They didn't just come here and come to America because they all came. They're all immigrants. Every single person who's in America today are in America as a result of immigration. And that's what they fail to acknowledge and to give its rightful place. Right? So you guys are all immigrants, but the whites had it easy because of the killing off of the Native Americans, because of the enslaved black people. So when you now in 2017 cannot get that out of your system, and continue to perpetuate that kind of stupidity, I call it.
Yeah.
There's only so much that people can take before they rise up and rally and say, no, enough is enough. And if you notice on the other side, the anti-white nationalist people were of all races, whites included, blacks, Indians, everybody. Yeah. So,
True. But what is the really awakening call in America right now? With all what that has happened, even with blacks, I mean, I'm a black person myself. I mean, we've gone so far. If we're going to use, the pinnacle of having a black man in the White House or as the president of the United States, that is something maybe you nor me or maybe people before us never thought they would have ever seen.
But then there are other people who are going to say that we really didn't have a black person. A black man. He just shed our color. He really wasn't. He's like our current prime minister and the prime minister before. His mom was white. Let's not forget. So he's not like you and me. He's not black.
I mean, you could call it a conspiracy theory, but that's how I look at it. I look at Obama being in the Black House, in the White House, as a total detour to really get black people off guard, because everybody was all up in arms and we have a black man in the White House. But what difference does it make when you still is going according to the white man plan? You understand? So there is nothing that
and one would think that he's of Kenyan heritage. You can't get more African than that.
And that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying in all these cases and things that was happening to black people, not once you ever heard of Obama give a speech to motivate black people in a way where we came from slavery and to really lead your race.
I really wouldn't say that, but then at the end of the day, you see, when you're the president of the United States of America, you're not the president of the black people. You're not the president of the minorities. So while you would make war, you're chafing at the bit to really rally your people and say Black Lives Matter, but the white lives also matter because you represent them. And chances are, more of the white people voted for you as a black man than the black people voted for you.
I will agree. I will agree, and that's why there is favoritism, and that's why people have preferences. So if I'm a Rast, all right, I know only tribulation Rastas go through the downtrodden history that Rastas have had and the pointing fingers. And if I'm a Rasta and I become the prime minister, I mean, of course, I'm the prime minister of everybody and not just Rastas, but I would pay special attention, because it's just like Kenny used to say, the people of Ghana, we need special attention, and I'm going to adopt you. It's just because these communities have been deprived for so long. You're not just the prime minister.
Yeah, but you see, in a small country, I think that you can get away with something like that. We're only 170,000 people. Yeah. But you're talking about millions and millions and millions of people. But, it's one way of looking at it.
If you get a Muslim president, if you get a Catholic president, believe me, these are the agendas they would push.
I don't necessarily think so.
But you don't have to. But the reality, you don't have to think so. but the reality would show it. Okay, thank you very much, Laura. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too. Thanks for sharing. And that's interesting. But I highly doubt that a Muslim president or a Catholic president or even a Jewish president would advance solely the causes of, We have another call online. Thank you for calling. You're on the air. What's on your mind?
Good night.
Good night.
St. Jude's Hospital burned down on 9/9/9.
Right, that's right, 9/9/9. I kept, because I remember saying that was at the time.
September 2009.
Right.
And they started the renovations in 2011.
11, you're correct. I remember.
Good show.
Thank you so much.
Good work. I always listen to you. Keep it up. Good show. Good night.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the correction. I remember those 2 years. It was 2009, 2011. But for some reason, I was having a little senior moment. And I did remember that 999 had that same year become the emergency number, I think, for fires or whatever. And I remember saying, oh my gosh, Americans have the 911 and we have 999. So she's quite correct. It happened 9th of September 2009 and the renovations started in 2011. That's a long time. However, whether you look at it from 2009 or 2011, that's a long time. We're now in 2017 and there's absolutely no reason, because 2 years after renovations had begun, we, and I say we the people, because when the opposition spoke, they spoke for us, the people, we were clamoring for the hospital to reopen, and we're in 2017 and the hospital is not reopened as yet. So what's going on? What gives? We want to know what is contained within the inquiry report. We want to know why the hospital into 2017 is still not opened. We want to know why DCA did not know that there was no approval for what's going on, and was there really no approval for the work, the construction work that's going on at St. Jude? Inquiring minds want to know, and I think it's incumbent upon the administration to let us know. We voted for you, we voted you in, and we voted for transparency. But what the heck am I talking about? We did vote in 2007 to 1997. Oh my gosh, tonight I'm really on a roll where poor memory. In 1997, we did vote for transparency and accountability, and we never got it. So what makes me think? What has changed so much since 1997 and 2017 that suddenly, any government, any administration is going to be transparent and accountable to the people who voted them in? I think I must be dreaming. I really must be dreaming. So, we really want to know what's going on with our hospitals, not just the St. Jude Hospital. We also want to know what's going on with the EU Owen King Hospital. Why is it not open? When is it going to be open? The training has gone, the doctors and the nurses and the auxiliary staff have gotten trained. Are we going to have to retrain them? The longer the period between the first training and the opening, are we going to have to bear the cost of retraining these people to come in? How are we going to maintain that hospital? How are we going to maintain affordable health care? Because this hospital is not a little hospital. It's going to take a lot of money to run it, and to run it efficiently, and to continue giving us the service. Because right now, I understand at St. Jude, every cotton ball that you use, you've got to pay for it. And I remember at one point, they were even asking people to come in with sutures. and to come in with certain, things like cotton balls or whatever. They were asking people to come in for surgery or come in for treatment with those things because the hospital couldn't afford. I mean, I remember there were times when St. Jude couldn't even feed its resident patients. Babies couldn't, the hospital couldn't afford to buy formula to feed the babies, and oftentimes, bravo to the people, the staff of the catering department, that they could use their resources, their personal resources, their personal network to ensure that the resident patients of the St. Jude Hospital are fed. And then you would still have people in positions who really don't care, because you know what? They must get paid. And then those suppliers, the vendors, the unscrupulous vendors who supply goods, especially fresh food, to the hospital and give them substandard food. You know what? If you're going to be a vendor or a supplier to a hospital, you better ensure that whatever you're supplying to the hospital is of a high standard, because you never know when you yourself or your family members would be patients at that hospital. So to say that they're taking 90 days and 180 days to pay, so you're just giving them anything, and you know what? They're so hard pressed that they have to accept it. No. You must have a conscience. You must accept the fact that someday, one day, any day, could be you, could be a family member, would be a patient at the hospital. So no, I do not subscribe to that. And again, I say bravo to the catering department, because without the catering department and their various resources and their various and excellent use of their network to get fresh fruit, I can speak to that intimately because I know. Bringing fresh fruit, mangoes, to the hospital, because they need and they can't afford to pay you, so you do it anyway because you're a good humanity. And you're going to tell me that there were people who are going to get paid for their goods and bringing in substandard fish that's already, that's of questionable standards, food that won't last the afternoon. I mean, where's your conscience, people? And then we wonder, because everything that we do, there's a ripple effect. There's a ripple effect for everything that we do. And speaking of ripple effect, going back to the Trump situation in America, when people have consciences, here's what they do. They disassociate themselves with institutions, commissions, possible fame, and notoriety in the name of a good fight. As we speak, the CEOs of the Trump's American Manufacturing Council are resigning in droves. Well, at least three of them have resigned following the Trump's initial tepid response to the Charlottesville incident. That is what people of good conscience do. Denounce, even though you stand to benefit, even though it is your party doing the deed, even though your company stands to benefit, even though it would look good on your resume, you stand resolute against any nonsense that would marginalize anybody, particularly minorities, in favor of other minorities. Because I firmly believe those white supremacists, those white nationalists, the KKK, the Nazis, they're all in the minority. But they speak loud and they instill fear. So regardless of whether you stand to gain, here's something you can do. Denounce, even at your own personal loss. disassociate. Be the bigger person. And that is what those 3 CEOs have exhibited. Even Republicans are denouncing. And this is what I expect from our own politicians and from our own people. To stand up regardless of whether you stand to benefit personally or lose personally. You know, a couple days ago before I went on vacation, I was listening to a talk show host, popular afternoon talk show, radio talk show. And apparently people had been calling and really, you know, having such grudges against the telecommunications company for shoddy service. And I have been through that where, you know, I'm calling right in the middle of news or a program that you waited all day to watch or whatever. Boom, no service. And I was listening to those executives explain why their problems persist. And I was thinking to myself, we can really take people for a ride, you know. You can really take people for a ride. You knew you were going to merge. You knew the merger was going to put pressure to bear on your current system. You did not ensure that your current system would have been able to accommodate hundreds more customers. And while people are complaining, you're upgrading. And while you're upgrading, people have been without service for weeks, to hear some people say, intermittent or otherwise. And we're not getting any retribution for that. We're not getting a rebate on our bills. And we're just supposed to say, okay, this is just how it is. But you know what? We will just say that's just how it is. Meanwhile, as I'm listening to people griping against this particular service provider, I am getting on my phone a chance to win a J5 or Samsung S5 or whatever it is. And I'm thinking, hello, you can give me a service, but you can send me a message to tell me to pay you for a chance to win while you're making money off of my back while I'm thinking of discontinuing another service from you. We have another call online. Thank you for holding and thank you for calling. What's on your mind? Hello.
Hi.
Good night.
I'm just trying to tell Desmond call him to call me.
I'm sorry?
I'm just trying to tell Desmond call him to call me.
Okay, I don't know how I would tell Desmond call him or to call you.
I'm not from Lobby, but I like the program.
Thank you.
But I just want Desmond call him you together as a fireman.
Well, if Desmond Collymore is listening, he will.
I only hope so.
I don't know if you can recognize your voice, but I certainly don't know who you are and how I should get in touch with Desmond Collymore.
My name is Robert.
Your name is Rupert?
Robert, 144.
Robert?
Yeah, 144 Robert.
144 Robert. Well, I hope he's listening and he gets in touch with you, Robert.
Okay, good. I wanted to come to a funeral of Mr. Primer's daughter.
Okay, yes, the funeral is tomorrow.
Yeah. Tomorrow?
Yes.
Oh, that's good. I'll be there.
Yes, the funeral is tomorrow, and there's a tribute before the funeral. The funeral starts at the tribute starts at 2. Okay.
That was my fire chief.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yes. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right then, dear. Take care. Glad to be of service. Yeah. So we're just going to sit down. I was talking about service providers not providing the service that they're supposed to provide and expecting us, the people who are paying for the service, to just take it and sit there and say, oh, it's okay. You know, we like to compare ourselves to other nations, but we only do it when it suits us. We only do it when it suits us. We don't or do it all the time, you know. And by rights, we should, all of us who are being affected by shoddy service providers, take a stand, picket their offices, and maybe then they'll understand. Withhold the payments. What they're going to do? Cut off our service? Let them cut it off, because already we're not getting good service, right? You know, and I listen to these people, and I would say to them, she says, we are improving. And I would say to them, we are continuously buying new equipment. I really don't care whether you're buying new equipment or whether you're improving your network. What I do care about is that I'm paying for a service, and by golly, I should get that service. And if I'm not going to get that service, there should be some sort of recompense for not getting that service. And it should not be a matter of, call or next month. Like I heard a customer complaining. They said they'll get it on the next bill, and the next bill came, and he called and they said, oh, pay that bill and it will reflect on your next bill. And the next bill came, and guess what? There was no rebate on the next bill. And they said, just pay this bill. And then on the next bill, 3 bills later, no rebate. So is he supposed to continue paying and waiting for a rebate that may never come? That is left to be seen. Yes. So the number is 451-9788. Feel free. It's an open mic to call in with whatever grievance that you may have, whether you want to continue discussing some of the issues highlighted so far, or whether you have any other grievance that you may want to discuss. You can send us your emails at laurajappier@gmail.com, or you can send us your WhatsApp messages at 284-6536. And some of the issues that we've been discussing so far are visa restrictions to Venezuela. What do you think? Do you think that in light of the civil unrest in Venezuela, and in particular, bear in mind that we have had at least one citizen allegedly who has been kidnapped and tortured by Venezuelans, and I'm saying allegedly because we really don't know the veracity of the videos, and although the authorities have said that they are going to look into it, and the Venezuelans have said that they are going to look into it, we haven't heard anything, and frankly I'm not holding my breath to hear anything, because this is just how it works in St. Lucia. It's just how it works in St. Lucia. We're always told that we're going to hear something, and we haven't. By the way, like I said, I've been out of commission for a little while. Have we heard anything about the report on the blast at the RG Quarry, which happened in March, earlier this year? Have we heard anything? We heard that there's an investigation. I heard the investigation is complete and that the DPP has the report. Have we heard anything else? Again, this is life in St. Lucia. You know, this is life in St. Lucia. There is a report, there's an investigation, a report comes out, and we hear nothing. And we hear nothing. So, are we in favor for visa restrictions against Venezuela? What about the Charlottesville attack against the anti-white nationalists who were counter-protesting in Charlottesville over the weekend, where 1 woman got killed and 19 were injured? What do you think about the president's remarks with that regard? What do you think about? And what do you think about the president's choice of chief strategist, although those in his camp are continuously saying that, you know, he's not anti-black or anti-Jew or anti-Islam or anti-Muslim or whatever, and that he's not a white nationalist himself, although he surrounds himself with those people who are key in instructing him as to his next moves. What do you think about that? There's blame on both sides, he said. Murder in St. Lucia, coming back home. We have had 33 homicides in St. Lucia so far for the year, up to from last year where we had 31. and we're only in August. What do you think about that? What do you think about our policing, our ability in this country to police our people, our citizens, to protect and serve our citizens? What are your views on that? Don't forget, the number is 4519788, and you can give us, send your WhatsApp messages to us at 2846536, or send us your emails at laurajapier@gmail.com. Just checking the messages here, see if there's anything worth talking about on platform. Right. Okay. So, other emails, some messages are here, but nothing to report. Yes. What do you think about the CEOs who are leaving the Trump's American Manufacturing Council? So far, 3 of them have left. And they're saying that they find it untenable. The president's position, and some of these people are Republicans and some of these people are Democrats, so it's across the board. Both Democrats and Republicans are repudiating the president's stance on Charlottesville. One of the CEOs, the Intel chief executive, is saying, "I resign from the council to call attention to the serious harm our divided political climate is causing to critical issues." Are we ever going to see some of that happening in St. Lucia, where our vision commissioners and various commissioners on various committees are going to resign because they can't stand what's happening within the country? Are we going to see anything like that? We're due for a break. When we come back, the lines will continue to be open, and I wait your calls for your views on what we've been talking about and any other issues that you may have to open discourse on. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and thank you for staying tuned to what's happening now with Laura. This is the platform where we make your stories our stories. So feel free. The lines are open. The number is 4519788, and you can send us your messages on WhatsApp at 2846536, or you can send us your email at laurajapier@gmail.com. Please try to keep the emails and the WhatsApp messages relatable and messages that I can relay out there. I know some of you may not necessarily want to call and you want to send your messages, but it's kind of tough when I'm reading messages that you're sending to me and they're not related to the show, or, you know, by now I accept that I'm pretty, so you can't keep sending those messages every week and saying that, and you're taking time away from. As much as I love the flattery, and flattery will get you a lot of places in my book, but you know, let's try let's try to keep it relatable so that I can share your views with our viewers. So we've been talking a lot about the Americans and what they've been going through right now, especially in the wake of the Charlottesville incident, and where we've been talking just before we went on break. We're talking. I was sharing with you some of the statements that were made by the CEOs who left, who resigned from the Manufacturing Association. You know, and one of the statements made by Fraser. I think Fraser is before we get into Fraser's statement, after the white nationalist rally turned deadly on Saturday, Trump initially said that many sides were to blame, but on Monday he sort of did a recant in a statement. He denounced the neo-Nazis and the Ku Klux Klan as criminals and thugs, bowing to mounting political pressure as critics assailed him for not singling out white supremacists. I mean, why would you not want to do that when they're the ones who killed a young lady in her prime? She was only 32 years old, you know, injuring 19 people. Yeah, there were two factions at the same on the same site. But when somebody drives their car through, and that person had already been espousing white supremacist vitriol. Can you tell me how? Can you tell me how there are many sides to blame here? And this is the very same bully who comes down on smaller nations for lesser infractions. Lesser infractions. You know, they now want to invade Venezuela and to be able to tell Venezuela what to do. And luckily for them, Macosa, I think it's called, the bloc, the Latin American bloc, say no. You know, sovereign reign has to take supremacy in this instance and allow the Venezuelan people to deal with their situation. How many situations have you known where America has invaded and the people are better off for it? You know, I was having a conversation with someone just yesterday, and they were saying that they were reading an article somewhere where the Saddam Hussein, remember Saddam Hussein, where the people are actually saying that they had better lives while Saddam Hussein was alive. You know, they killed him, they executed him, and life isn't better. And that the American people had promised a better living, a better standard of living for them, and it hasn't materialized. And I quite like when sovereign states stand up and say, no, let us allow us. You may not agree with what we do. You may not agree with how we do what we do, but allow us to deal with our situations. You know, you've got a lot in your own backyard that you've got to clean up. Allow us to do what we have to do. So Kenneth Frazier, I was talking about Kenneth Frazier earlier. And Kenneth Frazier is the chief executive of drug maker Merck. He is an African American as well. And he said that he left the advisory council because of the president's reaction after the violence between white supremacists and counter-protesters. Frazier cited the need to take a stand against intolerance and extremism. America's leaders, he says, must honor their fundamental right, their fundamental views by clearly rejecting expressions of hatred, bigotry, and group supremacy which run counter to the American ideal that all people are created equal. You know? And he was saying that as a matter of personal conscience, he feels responsibility to take a stand against intolerance and extremism. When are we going to see anything like that here? Instead, what we have is a select few people who think that it's their God-given right to have their finger in every pie. That contract after contract must be renewed because they are de facto the best, certainly not the only experts in a certain field, but because they've been through the trenches, that whatever contracts that they have must be renewed, regardless of resources expended, regardless of whether there are other people who can, at a cheaper price or, you know, more favorable contract terms, do the jobs, or regardless of whether they can allow other people to have the experience, to contribute. That's the word I'm looking for, to contribute. Not just get the experience, because especially when you're talking healthcare, issues like healthcare, you really don't want, although they call us patients, you really don't want people practicing, although it's called a practice. I wonder why though. Practicing on you. You want to make sure that you have the best expert, the best healthcare professional working on you. So there's always that kind of debate. Maybe one day we'll have a discourse on that. Why are our doctors, after 30, 50 years in service, still practicing? That's That'd be interesting. I'd like to hear your views on that. Don't forget the lines are open. The number to call is 451-9788. The email address is laurajepi@gmail.com. And the WhatsApp platform is 284-6536. So remember I told you about Fraser, who is the CEO of Merck. Well, the Trump responded by tweeting, by saying that Ken Fraser of Merck Pharma has resigned from President's Manufacturing Council. He will have more time to lower rip-off drug prices. And that was an issue I wanted to talk about. Ken Fraser was the only CEO singled out by the president, by the Trump. Only. And then somebody will tell me that he's not espousing the beliefs of the white nationalist groups, and that behind ascribing blame to the many sides was not to give a tap on the back, good job, to the neo-Nazis and the Ku Klux Klan and the other white supremacist groups that were involved in Saturday's incident. Begs the question. Here's what another CEO had to say. This time, Kevin Plank of Under Armour announced his resignation. When he announced his resignation in a Twitter post, he says, "We remain resolute in our potential and ability to improve American manufacturing. However, Under Armour engages in innovation and sports, not politics." Diplomatic. You accepted the post, but now, you know, you're resigning because you're into certain things and not politics. Yeah. When are we going to see that? When are we, our own people, going to stand up against and say, at personal cost to me, I'm going to give up. I'm going to not see partisan politics. You know, I'm not going to give $200,000 to one of my cabals. I'm not going to give half a $1,000,000 in contracts, direct awards to my cabals, you know, simply because, you know, they're a part of my party. But then turn around and hypocritically point the finger at others, you know, and say, well, you have to show me, or have you done due diligence, and do you know why? We want to know why this contract was given to this one and not that one. When you yourself did it, you know, or continue to do it. When are we going to stand up and say, no, we can't be paying for somebody to be trained to get a job when there are other people doing that same job? We can't do that. When are we going to stand up and say no? Regardless of whether it's my party, regardless of whether I supported you, I can stand up and say no. You can't pay somebody to train them to do a job that there are other people doing, other people who are already qualified, other people who spend their hard-earned money to get qualified. When are we going to stand up and say, I'm not going to settle for that? When are we going to hear the message that people are bringing out and not attack the messenger? We have a call online.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, Laura.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm not too bad, thanks.
Okay, I just like to say, you know, that this is the problem we have here in St. Lucia. When it is that our party or our affiliation or whatever it is that we tend to put the terminology to are having issues, we go quiet. And that is our problem. We tend to be sheep at that point. But when it is that something is going wrong on the other foot, we blast, we make issues, we make noise. you know, and it's become sort of our culture, you know, that to just go into our shell when things are not happening the way it is supposed to. And what I would really like to speak to St. Lucians about as a young person is that we need to be brave. We need to be brave when it is our party or our support who is doing the things that are wrong and call them out on it. We need to be brave when it is the opposition or those that we feel that are not aligned with our agenda that is doing it wrong. And also, alternatively, to give support where support is due. And this is what we are failing to do as a nation. We are a bunch of criticizers when we feel it is due. But when it has to be given and it is not in alignment with what we believe, we tend to crawl into our shell. And that is my main point tonight. I just want St. Lucians to be brave.
But before you leave, though, how do you suppose that we can inculcate that attitude into our people? How do you think that we can begin to change? And, you know, a lot of people have been talking lately about changing the narrative and changing the, you know, the talk. But that's just it. It's talk. It's more talk. Yeah, we're changing the narrative, but it's more talk. How do we get our people, first of all, not to just change the narrative, but to act on that change?
It all starts with the youth, as I see it. It all starts with the youth, because if for years and years, 50 years, 60 years, you've been doing something a certain way, it is difficult to break that habit. It is difficult to break that chain. But it is the youth. That's what I've always been saying. The youth is, you know, wherever you want your country to go. If you can change the mindset of your young people, you could either have a great nation in the future or you could have a terrible nation in the future. And the way that I'm seeing we're going the lines of having a terrible nation, because we keep on neglecting our youth.
But you see, the youth, I keep saying that our youth are using neglect as a crutch. But we must remember that we have a very youthful nation. We have an aging population, and so room has to be made for the young people, because eventually the older people, they'll die out. They'll not be able to do the things for the young people. So the young people have to step up. But we're using the fact of neglect by past administrations or past organizations as a crutch. How do we stand up? I mean, I remember earlier this year, the National Youth Council had elections, right? And so a new council was elected. When was the last time you heard that council do anything or say anything or take a stand on anything?
That is true.
And to my mind, this is the incubator for the youth. This is where young leaders are supposed to be incubated. This is where they are born. This is where they're nurtured. This is where they're supposed to shine. But we're not hearing anything.
But the truth also is, what resources are being allocated to these persons, and then what agenda do they really, what teeth does that organization really have? Because at the end of the day, yes, it's all fine that, you democratically elect a committee to run affairs on behalf of the youth. But where is the support? Where is the subventions? Where is
You see, again, we are looking for somebody to give us handouts. We're looking for the handouts. But these crop of executives, when they came in, they knew
what you're getting into.
Exactly. So why are you looking now for subventions? Why are you looking now to government, who you're going to be challenging anyway, to give you a handout? If you're going to challenge me, you think I'm going to give you money to challenge me?
The thing is that why should it be a challenge?
But it has to be a challenge.
Right.
Because if it is not a challenge, it's conformity. And we're saying that what exists right now needs to change.
Right.
And if it needs to change, boom, you have a challenge right there. I'm not saying that it has to be violent or it has to be aggressive, but it has to be a challenge. And I'm challenging young people, especially of the NYC, to go out there and make their presence felt. When was the last time you heard anything of the NYC? The last executive, when was the last time you heard anything about them? And you see, the thing about it is that it's good to have on your resume, I was the president of the NYC. But what is your legacy? What did you leave behind? What were the changes that you made? How many lives have you touched?
I do agree. But then the powers that be also need to recognize that there is great power working with those individuals.
But they will not recognize it because it does not suit their end.
That is where we fail, because at the end of the day, every 5 years again, they use these groups, they speak about Radio St. Lucia as being a political arm of the government at the time or of the day. But at the end of the day, they use every segment of society. They use, at election times, the youth groups form. They just pop up from nowhere. The women's arm pop up from nowhere. The this pop up from nowhere. And at the end of the day, when everything settles, the dust settles, everything disappears.
You know, if I were to come to you and I were to say to you, come work for me at my store, I'm not going to pay you. I can't pay you. But you can get it on your resume. Would you come? Considering you'd have to drive an hour or take the bus and pay $8 to get to my store, would you do it?
No.
So why are we continuing to play as if we're victims? You wouldn't do it for a fellow person who's trying to rise up, to make something of themselves. So why do it for government officials who are not working in our best interest? You see, the problem is not the youth. The problem is the people. Regardless of the age range. The problem is we are keeping ourselves as victims. That is it. So we need to reacculturate ourselves. We need to say, no, I'm no longer going to be a victim. You're not going to come and use me. It's like a woman in a relationship with a man. You come home, you lay me down, you have your way with me, and then you go. Then you come back, you tell me where's supper. You never gave me $5. You prohibit me from going out to work. You never gave me any money to buy bread and eggs. But when you come, you want bacon and eggs and everything. And you whip my butt because I couldn't get it. Then I go and get it from some other man because I want to get it for you. And then you whip my butt even more because I went and I got it from somebody else. A lose-lose situation. We're playing the victim. And we need to change that.
I think what needs to be done is that the youth needs to really come together and think of where they want to see themselves in the future, because when you think about grown-ups or persons who supposedly are supposed to know better, to think of your future for you and where they want to see you being, that it really comes up to nothing. So the youth needs to have a forum, a general forum, where all who are interested come together and really speak on where we should see ourselves, where we should, what is our 2020 vision, what is our 2030 vision, and what we should put in place, and what we should demand if it's feasible, or what it is that we can do on our own. And I feel that is how it should really happen.
Absolutely. I thank you so much for sharing. And I want you to keep the faith and to as a young person, to keep thinking. And the good thing about it is that we're good at giving advice and seeing from the outside what needs to be done, but we're not good at taking that advice and manifesting it within our own lives. So thank you so much for calling, and thank you so much for sharing. But this last caller made absolute sense in a roundabout way. I mean, we have a culture of playing the victim in this country. And it's not just in this country, I think Caribbean people on a whole. Because I was speaking to a friend of mine from St. Kitts and one from Trinidad a couple weeks ago. One from Barbados as well. I think it was Barbados, St. Kitts and Trinidad, and St. Lucia, myself being from St. Lucia, of course. And we were talking. And you could swear that we were all from the same country. It's the same rhetoric everywhere you go. Young people need to be given avenues. Well, why aren't we creating our own avenues? If we can see so much what it is that government and the adults and, organizations aren't doing, why aren't we doing something about it? Why do we keep waiting for handouts? Why aren't we charting our own territory, our own courses? It doesn't mean that everything that we do needs to be funded by money. If we know that we are a resource that service providers need, that the government needs, that the opposition needs, why don't we use that as a leverage? They need us. That's what I hear young people say all the time. They need us. They use us for their own ends to get to their own. They use us as a means to an end. So if we know that they're using us, why are we allowing ourselves to be used? Women, hear what the last caller said? Just call elections. The youth groups, they crop up. The women's arm, they crop up. The men's arm, they crop up. All the arms. It's almost like you like spiders. All the tentacles, they come out. All the legs, they come out. All the arms, they come out. And then we turn around after the elections are over, after the silly season is over, and we gripe about how they used us yet again. But in 5 years' time, we will lay our back, spread our legs, and say, have your way with me. That's how it is. When are we going to stand up and say enough is enough? I'm not going to be abused. I'm not going to be used for your own amusement. I am not going to be a victim anymore. When? When are young people going to come together? And I use the example of the NYC, but they're not the only youth organization. Since I've been doing this show, countless youth groups have come through the studio, through our set, purporting to do this and purporting to do that. And for the instance of the time being when they come out, oh yes, they've got all the most wonderful ideas. Give them a couple of months. You can't hear them for anything. You can't see them for anything, but they had all these bright ideas. When you tell me you want to work with ghetto people, marginalized youth, inner city youth, who are beleaguered every day with the advent of drugs, incest, crime, and you tell me that you're going to pray for them and you're going to have a mass and you're going to hope that they come and hear the word. You realize that they're not coming to hear the word right now, right? They're not seeking out the church. So when you're having these masses and these services, whom exactly are you reaching out to? You think just because you have a mass in honor of them, they will come? I will come. Those who are not so encumbered will come. But we're not the audience that you want to reach. How many of you go into the ghettos, into the inner city communities, and have a chat with and find out why, the needs, the root causes of? A few months ago, a while back, short while back, this, what's her name now? Cheryl Clark and her husband were gunned down within a month of each other. And to hear certain people speak, you live by the gun, you die by the gun. I didn't know the people personally, so I'm just repeating what some people are saying. How you live is how you die. But then there's another faction, another set of people who will say that they were community leaders. That they were community leaders, that they tried their best to change and to shape and to mold the lives of the youth in the communities where they lived. These people were gunned down regardless of what their background and their history were. They were gunned down in the streets like dogs, like stray dogs. Have we heard anything with regard to the investigations? Do we have any suspects in custody? What's an update on those murders? There was a time where people were just dying like flies. And we vowed to do something about it. Are we ever going to stand up and ask, scratch that, demand answers? Are we? Do we even think that we deserve answers? Maybe it's a situation where we don't think we deserve to be treated differently. Maybe that's what it is. So if anything that I can leave with you as we wrap up this evening, anything that I can say to you is, let us not play the victim. Let us not accept every and anything that is thrust down our throats. Let us stand up for ourselves, for our children, for our children's children, for the legacy left for us by our forebears. Let us stop being victims when our leaders come to us with all the rhetoric. Let us not shut our mouths, cower, and say, well, it is what it is. It is what it is. Because we're so afraid of personal cost, of losing, that we in turn become victimizers when other people stand up. Let's not be like that. Let's not be cowards. Let us think about the long-lasting impact of our actions or inaction. Let us look at our brothers and sisters afar and see what their reactions are to some of the very same things that we are facing. And let's see how we can work that into our own situation to become better people. This is our time for this evening. I thank you for staying tuned, and I look forward to chatting with you next week. Bye-bye.